Now pulled out my trusty Launchkey Mini, and we're going to get into how we're actually going to perform this session that we set up. This won't be an in-depth tutorial on the Launchkey, but just showing how I use it live. So the main way I use my Launchkey Mini is going to be in session mode. I'm going to hold down Shift and hit the session button. And holding down Shift and using these arrows, I can move that blue box up and down. My pads are lit up according to what's on the screen here. As you can see, pressing one of these pads is going to start one of those clips. And then this arrow button is going to activate the scene that I'm on. So this button is going to toggle between what's being showed on my bottom set of pads here. Right now the mode I'm in is just showing me exactly what's in my session view. You can see these are all blank because I don't have any clips here. If I move up a little bit, now it's filled with all the clips I have. That's where I like to leave it, but you also have the option of pressing it. When they're red like this, that means these are all individual stop buttons. So if I had a whole row of clips playing, I could stop just one. Taking the drums out there. When it's blue like this, that means I can solo the tracks. Just solo the drums. And then this section is controlling my clip activation buttons, or you can think of it as I'm just turning tracks on and off. But for me, I typically just leave it like this so I have a full view of what's going on in my session. If I hit Shift and hit the drum button, now this is just acting as a regular MIDI controller for the pads. Yeah, so typically I'm just controlling everything with these buttons. A lot of times I'm activating full scenes, but once in a while I am playing individual clips as well. Then I'm just using these keys to play my leads. Next we can get into the pots, and just like the pads, there's a few different settings for the pots. So when you hold down Shift, you have 3 options for the pads: Session, Drum, and Custom. These are all your options for the pots: Device, Volume, Pan, Sends, and Custom. I basically just always keep it in custom setting, but just to cover these really quickly: Device. If I'm on an instrument or a live device and I'm set to that, like for instance my chain selector, automatically it's gonna be controlling what's on there. So that varies a lot depending on what the device is. This one is just automatically gonna do all those macros. If I go to volume, it's gonna control the various volumes on all my tracks. So you could switch to this during a live set and do some mixing on the fly. Then panning, of course, is just the panning of all your tracks. I usually don't mess with that. Sends, if you have any effects that you want to send to your tracks. Yeah, and then ending here on custom, which again is how I use it. So just starting out in custom, these pots will be doing nothing. Basically in this mode, they're just open for you to assign to whatever you want. Let me show you some basic ways that I've used them. Alright, so just have an auto filter there. Gonna hit Control M for MIDI mapping. Gonna select my frequency. Then I'm going to touch this first knob. Moving it a little bit just so it's able to know this is the pot I want to assign. So we could get out of this mode right away, Control M, and then right away, just going to be moving as I move that pot. Let's go back to that for a second with Control M. Up here in the left-hand corner, I have a range. So for everything you map, you can set a predetermined range. So what I like to do is I'm using this kind of as a low-pass filter, but I'm never going to want to go as low as 26 Hertz. So let's say I want to do it around 2K. That sounds about right. I can move the pot as before, but going all the way to the left, it's going to stop at 2K because that's what I had it set for. Another thing I like to do is add a beat repeat on the drums. Go back to my mapping mode. I'm going to be changing the grid. All the way to the right, it does nothing. Then if I move it, you can map multiple controls to these pots, or you can map multiple controls to just one pot. You have a lot of flexibility in what you can do. Another fun way might be just having some delay that occasionally comes on your track. And I'm just going to map a pot to control the volume of the send. And these are just examples. You can really get crazy, kind of make it your own thing. This is just me showing you what I've done and what I've found useful. Next, I'll briefly show how to do live looping. I'm just going to play a drum beat. Have an idea here. I'm just going to hit this button. Following my global quantization, so I'm doing it by measures. And it just loops. One issue I will point out is that if I am using this instrument rack to have multiple instruments, I won't be able to do looping on every instrument. It seems to default back to the first instrument in my whole set, So the only one I can loop on is the very first instrument, and I'm not sure how to fix that yet, still kind of looking for a solution on that. One way to work around that is if you know what instruments you want to loop, you could just have them out here as a whole separate MIDI track. And if I hold shift and use my fixed chord and ARP button, I can move back and forth on which track is selected. And right now that doesn't do anything, but there is a text file that you can add to your preferences that means whatever is selected is armed. And so that's one method I might use in the future to get some live looping done. So to do that, you make an options.txt file, which is a text file made in Notepad or any plain text file using a text editor in Apple. Have it say enable ARM on selection. Then you're going to go to PC, Windows C, Users, your name, App Data, Roaming, Ableton, your version of Live, and Preferences. Place the TXT file in your preferences and restart live. Now whatever track you have selected will be armed. So that's my live set. And then just a couple quick tips for doing live sessions like this. Tip number 1, headphones. For those of you who have DJ'd or done this kind of thing before, that seems pretty obvious. But my initial thought was, I'm just going to hear my song through the speakers, so I don't need headphones. Depending on the monitoring of the room you're in, it may be very difficult to hear things. And also too, if you want to troubleshoot beforehand and your only method is hearing them through the PA, then you can't really do that privately. It's just going to be what everyone hears. So bring headphones. I did a couple shows without them, and now I always have them. And listening through the PA is an option, of course, but you want to have headphones if you need headphones. Then as far as performing, you're going to want to bring an interface and 2 balanced 1/4 inch to XLR cables. That way you can just plug them into any PA, you get the stereo sound, and it's going to sound great. So I've performed out like this a couple times. It's a lot of fun, just really cool to engage with this music in a different way and in front of people. And it doesn't need to be perfect. You can have a set that you try, and then you're going to build on it from there. The key is giving yourself a bad first draft so that you can improve on it. I think it's really easy to wait and wait and wait, especially when you can control so many things. You may want to get a perfect set. My advice is just make a set and get out and play it. That's how you're going to get better. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. Peace.